Welcome to AI Podcast with Zach. From expert tips and the latest trends to must-hear guest insights, ready to future-proof your brand?
I kind of want to share different folks from different parts of the industry. You know, you've been somebody I followed on my other accounts for years, so I was like, man, that is awesome that you're coming on. Big fan of yours.
Thank you.
You know, you've done a bunch of things. You've tested, A/B tested, platforms, products, tools, and all these things. How have you been able to streamline processes? How important are processes and systems for businesses?
I mean, processes and systems are incredibly important. That's the reason why before I got into building bots and doing things in AI, I was selling SOPs for specifically for various processes within the Amazon ecosystem, right? So like how to use this platform to run a launch campaign, how to use this platform to rank. So I had a job once upon a time where my whole job was writing SOPs. So it's like, okay, very systems oriented already because I had it drilled it into me, and learned from that experience that every business has so many systems or has so many processes that need to be systematized, or else you end up with a person whose job is to basically copy and paste stuff almost all day, and it's mind numbing. And I'm just like, that's crazy. We got to do something about that. So systematize, that alone really helps, but it was obviously a logical step in the next direction, which was to create automations out of those systems, of which AI obviously has a tremendous amount of amazing functionality in that. So
I remember watching you do things with make.com, and it was amazing because you actually took us through the process of you trialing and erroring through that. And this was a while back. Have you realized that Make is the one that you'd rather use over Zapier? Because, you know, it's a preference or it's price. What has been something that, from your expertise, that you could kind of share?
Well, I actually started using Make back when it was Integromat. So this is before it was even changed. And the reason was, at that time, I think this was 2017-ish, maybe earlier. Because at that time, Zapier was $20 a month and Integromat was $9. So I was like, well, I mean, you know, it's a business decision, very easy right there. But as I learned to use the platform, I also realized that I like the visual interface. I'm super ADD, so that's kind of how I got into Make. But now I'm pivoting more towards NA10, just because it has some functionality that I think is really important.
Right. You know, we're in 2025 now, and we keep hearing agentic AI agents. Is it the same? Is automation the same as AI agents for our listeners?
It is not the same thing. It's there are two different ways that you can define agent, in my opinion. In my honest opinion, there's two different ways you can define agent. An agent can be as simple as an instance of an AI with a system prompt that instructs it to do a specific thing. To me, that feels like a perfectly apt definition for the word agent. I don't know what else you would call that, right? I mean, it's too long to be like this instance of LLM, just call it an agent. However, a lot of people in the industry are pretty adamant about defining agent as something autonomous. I think that has a name. It's called autonomous agent. But basically, in their definition, an agent is something that has the capability of accessing tools to do things when it deems necessary, right? So the autonomy doesn't necessarily have to be huge, but it has to have the ability to, you know, it's got a knife and a fork and it can decide when it wants to use one or the other. And to them, that's an agent. Automation, however, doesn't require AI at all. Like, automation is just when there's a process from start to finish, and all of it is done without human intervention.
So when we're looking at make.com or NA10, that is automation. Can we implement AGI or any automation in it? I'm sorry, artificial intelligence into it at this moment in time?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So both the platforms, all no-code and low-code platforms currently have native integrations with the major language model APIs. So you can definitely have those agent instances I was referring to, but one of the reasons why I was drawn to NA10 is they actually have a native integration with LangChain that has built out their agents. So there's literally a node inside of it called an agent that you can attach tools to and give it the ability to autonomously select from the tools that you give it. It's fully complying with even the strictest definitions of the word agent. So you can build fully agentic processes inside of NA10 without much code.
So like if we were going to use an example, say a real estate agent that's got a team or home builders, how could they implement some of the processes or tech into their business today?
Oh gosh, there's so many different ways. So first, you probably would want to decide on, you'd want to departmentalize it, right? So for example, if you have a finance department, there's probably people in that department that do a lot of copy paste. There's a ton of automations that probably don't even need AI intervention that could really help out there, right? We're talking generating reports automatically, moving data from one place to another so it's visible to a different portion of the team, et cetera, right? If you want to discuss like how to implement AI agents, anything from content creation, that's a big one, right? A lot of people are interested in creating content or at least having assistance in that content creation process. Generative AI is really good with that, and that's both on the image, video, text side, all of it. Outside of that, you can also implement it in unique places where you wouldn't think. So for example, one of the automations that I built one time, it was this company had a sales force, right? And everybody, like there's a handful of sales reps, and everybody in there, all these sales reps, they all had, shared each other's calendars so that the boss could obviously route leads or whatever to whomever based on their workload. And I was able to automate that. That's automatable as long as there's an API that can connect to the calendar that you use. AI is smart enough to be able to look, and that's actually a simple thing. If you think about it, a human took brain power in several minutes of every day doing that when they didn't need to. So it's really simple. You have intake forms, you have some mechanism that makes the decision that, hey, there's a meeting to take place. Who's it going to take place with? And you don't need a human. And AI could simply look at it and go, well, based on the number of hours that are currently booked, this person needs it. And so on and so on. So little things like that, and then it can be more complicated processes too. I built an automation, literally today, I've been testing it all day. Amazon recently changed their rules for compliance for titles on their listings. And some sellers have huge catalogs. I mean, you can imagine like 1,500 SKUs, and they might have to go in and change every single one of those. I built a robot that is able to apply AI intelligence. They take the brand guidelines because, depending on the brand, there might be rules on like what words they like to say, et cetera. It takes the brand guidelines, and then it takes the new Amazon rules, and then it just goes through each and every title and then marks it. This is compliant, this isn't compliant, this is compliant, this isn't compliant. And then from there, it can all be put into one giant file that's just fed into Amazon and done. And that'll save literal dozens of hours of work.
So something like that, would a company hire you to on an ongoing basis, or is that a product that you would pass on to them, or a suite almost? How would that work?
So like for me personally, how I do it, it depends, right? So if it's fully custom, it would probably be like an ongoing project because we don't know what it's going to entail. If this is a suite that I've already built for somebody else, I can come over and say, here, is the flat rate or whatever, and this is how long I think it'll take. and then just implement it based on like the blueprint templates that I have that I've already built. So
That's super cool. When it comes to content creation, specifically social media, how can someone use, say, you know, the, your suites that you have? Because I think you have like a virtual content writer. And is this automation or would this be AI at this moment in time?
all of those automations leverage AI in some way. There is an intelligence component that either generates a piece of the output or makes a decision based on inputs that will impact what the output is.
It's funny how AI has become such a buzzword that corporations like, well, we have AI, we have a chatbot, but it's like, okay, but that's a start.
Yeah. Actually, I used to. So I have a colleague who worked for this company called Live Person. These guys were building chatbots and leveraging AI, artificial intelligence, to some degree, starting in 1995.
I used to use Live Person in 2011. Wow.
Yeah, they've been in the game for a very long time, and
Are they
that is
still
just
around?
crazy to me, though. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. That is
Yeah, I have
incredible.
friends that work there.
That's so cool. So tell me this, for content creation, what can we do with it? For, say, let's use Instagram as a platform.
So for content creation for Instagram specifically, or any of the platforms really, there's a ton that you can do. Some people are very passive, about their interaction with AI. So what they'll do is just go to one of the UIs like ChatGPT or Claude and interface back and forth with it on ideas, right? So it's a really good way to get unstuck. Another thing that you can do is take an input, right? So a lot of people, they find a motivation out in the world, and then they go, I want to post about this. They take an input and they give it to AI, and AI goes, this is what you could do with this, and they take that. So I build automations. One of the things that I would do, or I have done in the past, build an automation, for example, that takes an RSS feed from one of my favorite sources of inspiration. And every time that source publishes something, the RSS feed will grab it, will take it, will give it to an AI, an instance of AI, and that AI will then look at it, and based on my predefined prompts will say, turn this, reword this, add some context to it, so based on what you know about like me and my personality or whatever, and follow this kind of format for language, and then turn this into a post for LinkedIn. On the Instagram side, because that's primarily visual, I have actually built a number of automations that leverage video. So one of them, now there's a ton of, so before, like nowadays, they're actually off-the-shelf softwares for this kind of thing, but before most of them existed, I built this really cool engine that basically it went to Midjourney, had Midjourney produce like 12 or 20 or however many images, put them in a slideshow, went to 11 Labs and had a voice, like an audio file generated telling a story based on these images, right? So then you had the audio file and then you had the slideshow, merged them together and created a faceless video for Instagram Reels. Auto posted or auto published.
Oh, you can get it auto published as well. Is that through third-party software like later, or this was prior to all of this?
No. Make and NA10, all of those platforms have the capability of auto publishing to these platforms.
So they obviously can utilize APIs directly. Right into, wow.
Yes, they have native integrations with all of. Well, Make has native integrations with all of the content
Major
platforms.
platforms. That's interesting. For somebody that wants to kind of get started into this, how do they go about this? How do they get out there and create their own personal brand in this space, especially for content creation?
So if you're focused on content creation, I think the first step in attempting to leverage AI. So obviously the AI 101 class here is going to be go play with the interfaces that exist, right? I mean, they're free. You can talk to Claude Sonnet for a good amount of time before like it switches over to its less intelligent little brother on the free account. So you can go there and just kind of play around and figure out like what it offers you. Next level stuff though. So that's the beginning. Now let me skip to all the way to the end. If you're building a personal brand, what you want to end up with is a system that can essentially replicate you to the point where people can't tell it's not you, right? Like, because why are you leveraging AI in the first place if the ultimate goal isn't to do less work and have more creative output? And that's how you're going to do that. You want a system that can replicate you, basically duplicates you so that the other you that isn't you can do a lot of the work and you can go and focus more on creative endeavors. So the path in between would be learning how to use the APIs. So once you move away from the chat, right? So once you move away from ChatGPT, for example, open up the playground. That's platform.openai.com, right? So open up the playground and then see the difference, see the parameters, and then look at the API documentation. Go open up Postman, which is like a platform where you can send like test API calls, and then just copy the JSON over here. That's another thing too. You want to learn how to read JSON because that's how you figure out these API documents. Here's the hack. You learn this by finding the documentation, copying it all, and giving it to your chat UI and asking AI to explain it to you. Like I do this, I still do this all. I know how to do all this and I still do it all the time. I'll take all the API documentation, give it to Claude and say, explain to me like I am 11 years old, step by step, how do I make this API call? And I'll tell it where I'm doing it at. Like I'm using an A10, I'm using an HTTP module in make.com. I'm using, an HTTP module in Zapier. How do I make this API call? Boom, 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 and you just follow the steps.
Because for myself, I played with HeyGen to make a clone avatar. I wanted to, utilize 11 labs with 3 hours of voice content. And at the same time, I think, well, it takes me just as much time to talk on a camera sometimes than the avatar. Is it going to get easier over time? Because it itself is a process to clone.
A lot of this stuff is really heavy on the work in the beginning so that you can walk away from it. So the idea is once you have maybe only one, but if you want to diversify it, 2 or 3 of the HeyGen clones that has managed to look exactly the way you want it to look, right? It could take some work getting there, but once you have that, and then you've figured out all the parameters in 11 labs, that's going to let you like get your voice and tone inflection right and the emotional output right, because it has parameters for that now, which is amazing. Once you master that, and that takes time, that's a learning curve, then all you have to do is stitch them together, build a situation like a pipeline where you put a couple of ideas in. Those ideas are then fleshed out into a full-blown script, and then the script is given to the machine, and then the machine does its work.
You know what I've always wanted to do is find, say, the latest things that are happening in the world of AI, and then have a streamlined system where it gathers all the information, all the articles, and then it summarizes each article and then makes it into a script. And then is that possible?
So easy too. Like
Really?
You can literally do that. You could do that in make.com. It'd be simple. Use the RSS feeds, or if not, if they don't have RSS, because not all of the big AI companies use RSS, they don't have it. The other thing you can do is it sounds complicated, but I promise you it's not. Google actually has.
I'm emailing you.
Google actually has this feature where you can make your own programmatic search engine. They built it so that developers could put a search bar in their website, right? But you don't have to have that. You can go, and it's a really simple interface in Google. You go to this control panel, and then you tell it where you want to let it search. You could just let it search the whole web, or one of the things that I did for this exact purpose, for getting news and stuff, was I I narrowed it to Google News. So it was only going to get stuff from Google News. And then you get an API key, you get a custom search engine ID, and you can call that. And in your automation, you can literally have like, so I use forms a lot. So you have like a form that you could shortcut it on your phone and you put in a word. And then it'll search Google News for all the articles that fit, that have that in the search or whatever. You don't even have to do it with a form. You could do it on a timer. You can just have it run every day as long as it says AI in the title, right? Here's all the articles. And then it'll pull all of that in a single API call. And then all of those can be fed to an AI through the built-in modules in Make. You could give it to Claude. You can give it to Perplexity. You can give it to GPT, whoever. Especially now that all of them have like huge context windows. You could take 5 whole articles and it would eat that fine because it has 100,000, 32 to 100 to 200,000 token context. And then that's the prompt, right? Here's the latest. Here's yesterday's news on AI. Give me summarize each one. Give me an overall summary. Pull out the salient points. Boom, 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 and then write it into a script that will be read off a teleprompter. And then constraint, make sure you don't, act like a director, don't put any emojis in it. This will be read by a person off a teleprompter. And then you take that teleprompter script, you feed it into HeyGen's API, and then you don't even have to make the video.
Well, Anthony, so before we get going here is, I always hear, well, you're taking away the human. You're losing touch with that reality. Are we really, or are we buying back time? Because that's all we have. That is our most important asset, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this might be a strange answer, but I think it's both. I think people always focus on one or the other. It's either super negative, right? Like, no, you can't do that, and then it sports. And really, it's both. Like, yes, you're losing some human element there. If you want, I'll give you an example. I use AI to write articles. I do it. I put those articles on my website.
And do you use Claude or do you use OpenAI?
I'm trying to do. I actually have challenged myself to try to do this with as little money as possible. So I typically utilize like some kind of a llama. And then right now I'm doing a lot with Gemini 2.0 because it's free, because it's still in beta, so it's free. And I'm pushing out articles at like 3 cents. If you use Claude, by the way, it's more like $1.50. So,
but what about SEO in terms of the search? Because you come from a search background. Does it affect your search?
Okay, so my search background is more on e-commerce stuff.
E-commerce products.
It's keyword driven. So there's a lot of other strategies out there for like backlinks and stuff I'm not super keen on. With the keyword stuff though, I have that written into the generation. Like literally, I have a whole module that uses Google because I trust Google's language model to have the most up-to-date information about search. And it specifically always uses a Google model, whether that's Gemini 2, Gemini 1.5, 1.5 Flash, whatever. And it has a list of semantic keywords created. So every article has those in it. But what I was going to say was I do that because it buys me time and it gets like these do get traffic. However, I think I'm a better writer. So if I want to write something that's like super compelling, like I am speaking to my audience as me, then I will write it because I want that human element. But if I'm trying to save time, or, it's like, it's the 80-20, right? Like a lot of times you can get 80% of the job done with the tools. But if I'm going for a very specific emotional response, then I'll do it. So you kind of understand that it's both, and you give or take depending on the situation what it calls for.
Because you always hear things like, oh, you use Quillbot or use this spinner, but sometimes you use it and it doesn't make sense what you've written. You're like, ah.
I think we're past those days, thankfully. AI is so much better than the spinner. The spinners, I remember the spinners. The spinners, it was nonsensical.
Back in the day? Yeah.
It was hard to use those because it spit out such craziness. Now Now the complaint I see most people talking about whenever they're using AI for this stuff, for the outputs, is a lot of it's generic, and it really is. If you do not give it context, and that's kind of that's the secret hack that so many people miss. If you don't give it knowledge that it doesn't otherwise already have, it's gonna be generic. You're gonna be able to tell every time.
No, and that's the thing is like learn prompting. Yeah, that's for 2025. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see AI and automation?
Okay, I'll do that backwards in reverse. I see automation becoming significantly more important. I mean, I've seen it grow so much just in the last 7-8 years now. It's been nuts. There was a time when it was just a novelty idea, and now businesses are finally like, holy cow, like we're losing ground because we could be more productive if we start, automating things. So I see it becoming more and more important. AI, I see getting smarter, getting better at producing like real looking things that will on the good side look human, on the bad side look human. Like, so it depends on the actor there, right? Like who's using it, because it can be very helpful. I mean, if you can imagine, if you're let's just paint a scenario. Imagine that you work for a huge financial corporation like Fidelity, right? Like a huge bank. And you know that you have a boatload of rules that you absolutely must adhere to if you ever put any content out there. You've been tasked with producing a tremendous amount of training content for this new wave of sales reps that are coming through. And I mean, the workload looks ridiculous. You can automate that, and you can comply with the wishes of the brand because the tools now produce realistic output. So that's a example of it being really positive. Obviously, bad actors can make that a negative experience too. But I see AI becoming smarter and more realistic looking and feeling and sounding. Where do I see myself? I'm just going to leverage that. So I'm going to build systems for these businesses as they're now coming on and realizing, oh, we need this. I'm going to help by helping.
Are we replacing people though?
I am not, that is not my thing. I am not an advocate for that. I think that's the worst idea ever. The minute you fire somebody and replace them with AI, the AI is going to screw up, and you're not going to know how to fix it.
I agree.
We are empowering people. We are making it. So I have a bunch of, in my whole background is in e-commerce and Amazon. So I have a bunch of colleagues that still sell, and all of them, the barrier of entry to selling on Amazon is pretty low. So many people that jumped on board didn't have any business background. So they come on, they're a solopreneur. All these guys that made it, that are like big time sellers now, all of them have either one or an army of VAs. They hire out of,
Like
Eastern
Upwork
Europe.
or Fiverr or
Onlinejobs.ph a lot of times, right? So they come out of the Philippines. There's, I actually have a friend that runs a company that does that with Filipino VAs. They also source them from Vietnam sometimes, from all over the world. Anyway, point is though, is you have assistants that are virtual, right? And this is before COVID, but ever since then, especially like now, that's a huge thing. And AI is making their jobs easier. They're getting more output. They're doing less work, right? And that is what I like to help do, right? Like I want to make your job cake, and I work with companies who are okay with that. Like I don't work purposefully. I do not work with companies that are like, oh, I want to fire my staff. No, thank you. I work with the companies that are like, I would love it if my employees could take more time off because they're getting their work done so fast. Awesome. Then we can work together.
I love that. And by the way, I love your new videos. That branding you've done, is that change? Holy, with the black background and on
That's
point.
well, I wish I could take credit for that. That's actually not me. So my buddy, who runs a media company called Engram, he's out of Serbia, right? So he actually flew me to Serbia so that we could film a course. And he is the videographer and video editing mastermind. And he's just been pumping out clips from the footage that we took together. And I hop on all of it because it's gorgeous. It looks amazing. But he's really talented. So he can do that for other people too. So like, I know that you said that you help brand build and everything. If you ever want that look, you just have to talk to him.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for your time, man. I'm going to put a few of your links as well. I got a cold I'm dealing with, and it's not fun. It's minus 30 here in Calgary, Alberta.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm never complaining again. It's like, oh my God. It's like the coldest night here this winter it was like 58.
Oh, we have 20 centimeters of snow out here, and yeah, it's not fun.
Jeez, that's wild. I think it's only snowed here on Madeira Island like once in history.
I got to Google that place. I got to see what it looks like. It's
amazing. The Hawaii of Europe. That's what they call it. Literally.
Madeira Island. Okay. Well, thanks again for this. I appreciate it, man. And if you can leave the tab open for a little bit, it's just uploading to the cloud of Riverside.
Yeah.
So, you know how it is. Which is, I don't know. I wish they fixed that part, but maybe next time.
It's all good, man.
Thanks, Anthony.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
And I hope we'll have to do another one of these days. I'm going to bother you again.
Sure. Of course.